Hello, Ben here from Bounce Financial. I wanted to get on today to talk through a specific client scenario that we might come up with from time to time. Now, this scenario, I've changed some of the details just to sort of protect the privacy of the person, but this is a very common situation we may come across. And this is a sort of high-earning professional couple with kids who are looking to sort of, grow their wealth and make some changes in their life. So a couple of key things about this particular client. Husband's a 41-year-old engineer, makes $220,000 plus super. The wife is a 37-year-old lawyer who works 3 days, makes $85,000 plus super, and they've got 3 kids, an 8-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old. Now, as part of advice, the first step we go through is trying to understand what their financial world looks like. So some of the key things for this client, their home is worth $1.1 million and they owe $770,000. They've got some good savings in their offset account of $60,000 and they have a combined super balance of $300,000. Now, the first step we go through with clients like this is understanding their goals. What is it that they want to achieve? So for these particular clients, there was a couple of things that were really on their mind. The first was private school. They wanted to do private school, high school for all the kids. They were looking at 2 different schools. One was a lot more expensive than the other, and they wanted to understand what that meant for their long-term goals. They're also looking to upgrade or renovate their home, and they're sort of on the fence about the idea of buying or renovating and how much they could spend, and so we wanted to map that out as part of the plan. And they also wanted to start building wealth and starting to invest. They had their kids, they were starting to get through some of those harder periods, and they were ready to start gearing up towards retirement and different things that they'd like to do prior to that. So the first thing we start with is understanding what is their income. And when I talk to people, they'll be able to tell me what their pre-tax income, but very rarely do people know their post-tax income. So what we need to do is we need to go through and we need to deduct how much tax. And you can see that there's a lot of tax here. So the husband's getting charged about $74,000, the wife about $18,000, and so each year we have about $213,000 left that we can direct to our goals. Now, we need to understand how much their life costs to live because that is a big part of their finances, right? So as part of our advice, what we did is we went through and we worked out, okay, well what is a standard year? How much does that cost? And we usually go into way more detail than you can see here. We'll lay out groceries and rego and all those things. But overall, these are some of the major costs that they had in their life. Obviously, the big ones are childcare, mortgage repayments, things like that. This came to a total of $158,000, which is a pretty standard number I see for families like of this size and of this sort of earning capacity, right? So by going through this, we're able to say, okay, well, if we live within this, what does that mean for our longer term future? So the first thing we did is we sort of mapped out a bit of a account structure for them, where we put some money into a bills account, we put some money into a holiday account, some money into a spending account, and we can be certain that we've covered all the main bases. We were then able to say, okay, well, if this is how much they earn, this is how much life costs to live. Therefore, we have about $54,000 each year that we can dedicate to sort of longer term goals or growing wealth, things like that. Now, the next step we did is we went through some scenarios. So what we do is we use software to map out money coming in and money going out. And what we did is we mapped out a number of different scenarios of some of the decision points that we're trying to make here. So we mapped out the more expensive school versus the cheaper school. What does that mean long term? Obviously you spend more money on school, you've got less money for renovations or early retirement or holidays or longer goals. We looked at the upgrading versus buying a new house, incorporating things like stamp duty, sales costs, and all those things that can be different between them. We looked at the combination of all these things. So, doing the school plus the upgrade plus starting to invest, what does that do to our finances? And then we also looked at the idea of, okay, well, as we sort of move through these different phases and we start drawing on our investments, what does that look like and how much money do we need to sort of have those longer term plans in place? We then moved on to their super strategy and said, okay, well, we've got a sense of what we want to do here. How can we apply money to different areas of your life to ensure that we're sort of capturing them, right? And so that longer term, what we're looking at is superannuation. Now, for the husband, we recommended a $5,000 contribution. It suited where he was at. It was under his concessional cap, and it allowed him to save about $1,600 a year just straight away in tax. There are ongoing tax savings in superannuation, but I won't go into detail about that. The wife as well, we also wanted to be contributing to her super, and so we recommended $5,000, which sort of suited where they were at. There was a less tax saving here because she's not as high income earning as the husband in this scenario, but still $875 was saved in tax, which is great to see. With the super, we looked at a low cost super fund. We looked at making sure they were invested in the right things, that were growing. We made sure that they nominated each other so that if one person was to die, the other person would get their super. That's not a guaranteed thing. And we calculated how much money they need to retire. What we want to do is we want to be utilizing super to be reducing our tax, but we don't want to be putting too much in super so that it's locked away because you can't access it until 60 plus, depending on your circumstances. So by going through that exercise, we then now have a new family income because money's going to super, our tax has changed. And so we went through and we calculated that again and said, okay, we've got about excess income, $48,700. Now, the two things we really wanted to address was we wanted to address the home loan and dealing with debt, and we wanted to look to start to invest. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to send money to these particular goals based on what they're trying to achieve. Now, for these clients in particular, we talked about the idea of doing the renovation loan or the upgrade. So we wanted to be contributing a fair bit to their loan to make sure they've got plenty of money aside so they don't have to borrow too much and they can easily do so. So we recommended putting $1,100 a fortnight into that offset account, which averages out to be about $28,700 a year. We also recommended setting up an investment account. We funded that with $20,000 from their offset account, and then what we did is we put $769 a fortnight into the investment account, which averaged out to be about $20,000 a year. With the investment, we structured it through a family trust arrangement, which suited their purposes and suited some of their upcoming changes they were planning around their incomes, etc. We also really focused on low-cost, well-diversified investments so that we can confidently contribute to them every month going forward and not be trying to time markets or do anything super high risk or anything like that. So what was the outcome of this plan? So essentially what we do is we have an idea of private school. Okay, well, we were able to map out the higher versus the lower cost so they could make a more informed decision as a family of those trade-offs. We also mapped out the upgrade and the renovations. In the end, I think we talked about the idea of renovating rather than upgrading. And what we did is we mapped out paying off all that debt by about mid-50s, which they were really happy with. Obviously, they could borrow more and it would be a later time they pay it off. So it's just finding that right number for them. And then we also started talking about building wealth and starting to investing. So what we did is by directing money to the investment portfolio, we had money outside of superannuation that we could access in those mid-50s if we wanted to do things like wind down work or stop working at all or start spending a little more during this time. So we estimated they would have about $450,000, which was a good number to sort of carry them through. And then from age 60, we estimated they'd have about $2.1 million in superannuation, which was enough to sort of carry them through based on our modeling that we did, and also incorporating that they may potentially downsize the house once the kids are all out. So, went through all that. The final thing we looked at was their insurance strategy. So all of this was on the basis that they continue to earn those great incomes and that there's no disruption to them. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that they had life insurance, they had total and permanent disability insurance, income protection insurance, and trauma insurance. And we recommended that based on their particular needs of what they needed. We also applied directly to the insurer to lock in the cover. And this meant that cover can't change without their permission. Any insurance you hold through your superannuation can change without your permission, and that can be very detrimental to your long-term plan. For a lot of these policies, we funded them from superannuation. It suited their particular circumstances and allowed for some tax discounts. And what we'd be looking to do is reduce that insured amount as they start growing those investment accounts, as they have money to sort of carry them through if something was to go wrong. Now, once we set up the plan, we provided them with ongoing advice. So we adjusted the plan continually. So, we had things like bonuses that were coming in, there were pay rises, there were additional costs with the kids, and this altered the plan constantly. So we wanted to tinker it and make sure that we were sending money to all the right places to capture all of these areas. We adjusted the investment, we monitored it, we rebalanced it. As they are looking to approach accessing that money, we want to start winding down the growth aspect of it to have a bit more certainty in volatile markets. Each year, what we did is we made sure that contributions were made to superannuation. We claimed the tax deduction. So a lot of people forget to do this and literally miss out on thousands of dollars. And we liaised with their accountant to make sure it was included in their tax return and they got all of their income tax back. We also provided them with quarterly reports tracking their spending and adjusting the plan if needed be. And each year reviewed the plan as a whole, planned for the next year, and kept going. So this is a good example of a particular client we may work with. We work with lots of different types of clients. So if this isn't you, please don't feel like we won't, we don't work with people like you. But this is a good example of sort of a high earning family that wanted some help with some of the questions they had and wanted a plan in place that would mean that they achieved their goals. As always, please reach out if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a great day.